Now we're on to their ninth affirmative defense. Good faith, honest belief. Owen categorically rejected good faith immunity for municipalities in 1983 actions. The Supreme Court held unambiguously that a municipality has no immunity from liability under Section 1983, flowing from its constitutional violations, and may not assert the good faith of its officers as a defense to such liability. Municipal defendants cannot assert subjective good faith as a defense to constitutional violations, as the court made clear that such immunity is wholly inapplicable when the liability of municipality entity is at issue. The court rejected the lower court's extension of qualified immunity to municipalities, emphasizing that 1983 creates a species of tort liability that on its face admits no immunities, and that its language is absolute and unqualified. Unlike individual officers who may claim qualified immunity based on good faith and reasonable reliance on the then existing law, municipalities are strictly liable for constitutional violations regardless of their officials' subjective intent or reasonable belief in the lawfulness of their actions. That's Owen. This is all Owen. This bright line rule forecloses any municipal defense premised on good faith, whether characterized as subjective good faith, reasonable reliance on existing precedent, or innocent mistake of law. Accordingly, defendants' ninth affirmative defense, good faith, honest belief, is legally insufficient as a matter of law and should be stricken as it improperly attempts to assert a defense that the Supreme Court has definitively foreclosed for municipal defendants in a 1983 action. Now let's get to this one, because this comparative fault is nuts that would bring up. All right, 10th affirmative defense, Section 1, inapplicability of a comparative fault in 1983 constitutional claims. The defendant's assert of comparative fault against the plaintiff as an affirmative defense is legally insufficient as a matter of law and should be stricken from their answer. This defense fails primarily because the Supreme Court has explicitly held that Section 1983 imposes liability for violations of rights protected by the Constitution, not for violations of duties of care arising out of tort claims or tort law. This precedent establishes that comparative fault, which is fundamentally a tort law principle, cannot be applied to constitutional violations brought under Section 1983. Furthermore, defendants' actions were ultra vires and without jurisdiction, creating void acts for which plaintiff cannot bear fault. The record establishes that defendant municipality issued arrest warrants without proper jurisdiction. When a municipal entity acts beyond its legal authority, those actions are considered void, and a plaintiff cannot logically or legally bear fault for municipal actions that lacked legal authority from their inception. The defense also fails because defendants' systematic failure to comply with court orders for a period of 5 years created an impossibility of performance for plaintiff. The municipality failed to provide any mechanism for tracking appeals or resolving the underlying charges and creating a procedural void that prevented any meaningful resolution of the matter. When compliance is rendered impossible by the defendant's own actions and institutional failures, comparative fault principles cannot reasonably apply. Additionally, the comparative fault defense impermissibly seeks to shift liability for defendants' own violations of ministerial duties and constitutional obligations. The Constitution places absolute obligations on municipal entities that cannot be diminished through allegations of plaintiff's fault. Allowing comparative fault in this context would effectively permit municipal entities to escape their constitutional responsibilities by shifting blame to the very people whose rights they are obligated to protect. Section 2, municipal's responsibility for AMS's agent, not third party. Plaintiff respectfully moves this court to strike a defendant's affirmative defense, alleging that the actions of a third party for whom defendants are not responsible were the approximate and superseding cause of any damages to the plaintiff sustained. This defense is both factually vague and legally insufficient. Assuming defendants are referring to AMS as the third party, this defense is contradicted by defendants' own admission in their answer. Defendants respond to allegations regarding AMS notice by stating the notices speak for themselves, thus not denying the content of those notices. In these notices, which are attached to the complaint as exhibits and are therefore properly before the court, explicitly state that AMS was court authorized as a private municipal account resolution company to assist the municipality in resolving the matter. Not by denying these statements and asserting that these notices speak for themselves, defendants have effectively admitted that AMS was acting with municipal authority and authorization and not as a third party. Municipal authorization of AMS renders the defense legally insufficient. A defense that is contradicted by a defendant's own admission cannot serve as a valid basis for avoiding liability. 6.8.10. The defense's claim that delegation to a private entity shields the municipality from a Section 1983 liability is untenable in the Fifth Circuit. Under West, private entities performing delegated municipal functions are state actors, and their actions can trigger municipal liability. Per Monell, municipality remains responsible for its policy, customs. Failure to oversee the delegatee causes the violation. Additionally, Pembauer confirms that a policymaker's decision to delegate authority can itself constitute a policy, binding the municipality if it results in a constitutional harm. Thus, delegation does not sever the municipality's obligation to ensure that constitutional rights are upheld, and the defense's argument fails as a matter of law.